The splash in the river. The forest was quiet. Birds chirped high in the trees. Leaves danced gently in the breeze. A river cut through the woods, calm and clear. Darren, a human man in his 30s, was walking along the edge. He often came here to escape the noise of the colony base. He liked the peace. He liked being alone. But today, something felt different. He paused and looked around. The birds had stopped singing. Even the wind had gone silent. The air felt heavy, like something was about to happen. And then, splash! A huge wave rose from the river. Something had fallen or jumped into the water. Darren stepped forward, confused. He squinted. The splash wasn't from a fish. It was something much bigger. He ran to the riverbank. At first, he saw nothing but bubbles. Then a strange shape broke the surface. It was long and thick, like the body of a large cat. But not any cat Darren had ever seen. Its fur was dark blue, glowing faintly under the sun. Strange silver patterns covered its back like tattoos. Its eyes flashed gold for a moment, then disappeared under the water again. "What the hell?" Darren whispered. The creature was drowning. Without thinking, Darren dropped his pack, threw off his jacket, and jumped into the cold river. The water slapped his skin like ice. He kicked hard and swam toward the bubbles. He reached out. His fingers touched fur. The creature struggled weakly. One of its legs wasn't moving. Its breathing was rough. Darren grabbed it under the arms, if they were arms, and pulled. It was heavy, too heavy, but he didn't let go. He dragged it slowly to the shore, gasping, shaking. When they reached the ground, Darren coughed and rolled the creature onto its side. It didn't move. He checked for breathing. Yes, still alive. Barely. That's when he saw something strange. Underneath the alien leopard's chest was a small bundle. A lump, a fur. It shifted. It made a tiny squeak. It was a baby. A cub, just the size of a human newborn. Its fur was lighter, soft purple with bright blue eyes that stared up at him. It looked more frightened than hurt. Darren's heart dropped. This was not just a wild beast. It was a mother. She had jumped into the river not for herself, but to protect her baby. Maybe from something. Maybe from someone. Or maybe just from drowning. Darren stepped back, unsure what to do. The mother was breathing but unconscious. The cub crawled closer to her, nuzzling into the warm fur. Darren looked. Around, no signs of others. No tracks, no ships, nothing in the sky. Just him, the river, and these two strange aliens. What were they? They looked like leopards, but they were not animals. He could feel it. Something about the way the cub looked at him. It was intelligent. Aware, like it understood. Darren moved closer. The cub didn't run. It tilted its head, studying him. Suddenly, the mother's eyes opened, gold and sharp. Her body tensed. A low growl rumbled from her throat. She tried to move, but pain made her collapse. Still, she placed one paw, hand, in front of the cub, protecting it. Darren raised his hand slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you." The mother's growl deepened. The cub looked up at her, then back at Darren. It gave a tiny chirp, soft and curious. The mother blinked. She didn't growl again. Minutes passed. Darren didn't move. He watched them carefully, waiting. The mother finally let her head rest on the ground. She closed her eyes, trusting him. For now. Darren knew what he had to do. He couldn't leave them here. Night was coming. The forest would turn cold. Wild creatures might come. Or worse, humans who wouldn't care about protecting alien life. He knelt down beside them. "I'm going to help you," he said softly. "You saved your baby. Now let me save you." The cub blinked. The mother breathed slowly. Darren gently picked her up, lifting her carefully. She was heavier than anything he had carried before. Then he wrapped the cub in his jacket and placed it in his bag, leaving it open so the little one could breathe. Step by step, he walked back toward the forest trail, carrying the mother over his shoulder. Above the trees, the sky darkened, and from high above, something else was watching. Not a beast. A mother Darren's boots crunched against the muddy forest floor as he walked, carrying the heavy alien leopard on his back. His jacket was wrapped carefully around the cub, whose bright eyes peeked out now and then. The mother groaned softly, weak and shivering, but she didn't fight. The old hunting cabin wasn't far now. It was a wooden shelter Darren had built himself, nothing fancy but warm and dry. He reached it just as the rain started to fall. He kicked the door open and stepped inside. It smelled of old wood, herbs, and fire ash. He laid the mother down, on a thick blanket in the corner. The cub leapt from his bag and crawled to her side, curling into her chest. She didn't move. Darren lit the fire quickly. Flames danced, warming the room. Then he sat back, wet and breathing hard, eyes fixed on the strange creatures before him. The mother's breathing was slow. Her leg was badly injured. Blood had matted her fur, and he could see cuts across her chest and sides. The cub whined, softly, and licked her face. But she didn't respond. For a long time, Darren just watched. This wasn't an animal. This wasn't a beast. This was a mother. And she was dying. He stood and walked to his cabinet. He pulled out a first aid kit, unsure what might work. Most human medicine wouldn't help an alien, but maybe, just maybe, something might. He cleaned her wounds as gently as he could. She growled once, low and tired, but didn't stop him. Her blood was dark violet. He wrapped the leg, he wiped the cuts. He placed a bowl of clean water beside her. The cub blinked at him as if confused. Then something strange happened. The cub placed a tiny paw on the side of Darren's face, and he heard something. A voice. Not out loud, but inside his head. Safe. Darren pulled back, heart racing. He looked around the room. No one else was there. Just him, the cub, the mother. He looked at the cub again. Did you speak? The cub tilted its head, then curled up beside its mother. Darren backed up and sat down. His hands shook slightly. That wasn't normal. This wasn't some wild creature. These were intelligent beings, maybe even telepathic, maybe from a race no one on Earth had ever seen before. He looked at the mother again. She had risked her life, in the river, not to run, not to escape, but to save her child. Darren had seen animals fight for their young before, but this was different. The way she held the cub, the way the cub spoke, even if only in thought, the way they looked at each other. This wasn't a pet. This wasn't prey. This was a family. A knock rattled the door. Darren froze. He wasn't expecting anyone. No one came out here. Not unless they were looking for something. He stood slowly and opened the door just a crack. A man in a gray suit stood there, smiling coldly. His eyes scanned Darren's face, then peered into the room. Evening, the man said. Sorry to bother you. We're tracking a creature. Dangerous. Escaped transport ship. You see anything unusual? Darren swallowed hard. Behind him, the alien mother was still. The cub was silent. He shook his head. Just me out here. The man looked at him a long time. Too long. Then he smiled again. Right. If you see anything. He handed Darren a metal card. Call that number. The man walked off into the trees. Darren closed the door and locked it. He looked back at the alien mother and her cub. Now he knew for sure. Someone was hunting them, and he had just lied to protect them. He looked at the little cub. It stared back, as if it knew everything, as if it trusted him now. Darren sat back by the fire and whispered, Don't worry. I'm not going to let anyone take you. Shelter in the storm. The storm didn't knock. It slammed into the forest like a beast let loose from the sky. Wind howled through the trees, tearing branches, bending trunks. Rain lashed the roof of the old wooden cabin like hammers. Lightning cracked above. The world outside turned dark, wet, and loud. Inside, Darren sat by the fire, wide-eyed and alert. The alien mother was breathing easier now. Her body still trembled with weakness, but the bleeding had slowed. The cub lay curled on her chest, fast asleep. For the first time since the river, the small creature looked calm. But Darren wasn't calm. He stood up and walked to the window. The trees were shaking wildly. In the flashes of lightning, he saw something strange. Lights. Not from Earth. Not from a ship he knew. Blue orbs glided silently between the trees, searching, scanning. Darren's breath caught. They were back. Whoever that suited man worked for, they were searching the forest. And now, the storm was hiding their movement. He moved quickly. He pulled an old curtain over the window, blocked the gaps with dye-cloth. Then he turned off the lamp and let only the fire burn low. He grabbed his old pulse rifle from under the floorboards. It barely worked, but it was better than nothing. He looked at the mother again. She was watching him. Not like an animal, but like a soldier, like she knew what those lights meant. "Are they after you?" Darren asked. Her eyes didn't blink. They didn't need to. He understood. Yes. Suddenly the cub sat up. Its fur changed color, from purple to brown, like leaves, like mud, camouflage. It blended perfectly into the blanket. Darren stared, amazed. "What? Are you?" The cub tilted its head and blinked slowly. It placed its paw on his boot and whispered again inside his mind. "We were born in cages." Darren's chest tightened. Cages? Was that what the man in the suit meant? An escape? From a lab? A prison? Outside, the wind screamed louder, but Darren wasn't listening anymore. He was remembering a report. Just weeks ago, a hidden off-world research ship had crashed nearby. Most of the wreck had been covered up by some private security group. No survivors were found, they said. Now, he knew that was a lie. 2 survivors were right here in his cabin, and they were being hunted. Thunder shook the walls. Rain leaked through the roof. Darren placed a metal basin under the drip and grabbed extra blankets. He covered the mother and cub, then sat down, rifle in hand. But just before he could relax, a sound echoed, not from the storm, from above. He stepped outside just under the roof. The wind slammed into him, nearly knocking him back. But he squinted through the rain and saw it, a black drone floating above the cabin. Scanning. It stopped mid-air, focused its red eye on him. Darren raised his rifle without thinking. Boom! The shot missed, but it was enough. The drone jolted backward and zipped into the sky. Darren ran back inside and locked the door tight. He didn't know what would come next. Soldiers? Machines? Or worse? He turned to the alien mother. "If we stay here, they'll find us." The cub looked up. The mother moved her head weakly. Darren picked up his map. "There's a cave system in the mountains," he said. "Deep and hard to scan. I can take you there." The cub chirped softly. Darren didn't wait. He wrapped the mother in thick cloth. The cub climbed onto his back. He stuffed supplies into his pack, grabbed the rifle, and kicked open the back door. Wind roared. Trees bent. The storm was getting stronger. But he didn't stop, because now, he wasn't just hiding them, he was protecting them. And something deep inside told him, this cub wasn't just a baby. It was something more. And if the wrong people got it, the whole galaxy could change. Hunters from the sky wasn't just storming now. It was watching. Dark clouds moved in strange, unnatural patterns. Not round, not soft, but sharp in lines, like ships were hiding inside them. Darren felt it in his bones. Something was above them, following. He didn't speak as he moved through the trees. The rain hit hard. The ground was slippery, but he kept going, one foot in, front of the other, carrying the wounded alien mother over his shoulders. The cub clung to his chest inside his coat, silent, eyes wide. Behind them, far in the forest, a red light blinked. Darren had no doubt now. They were being hunted. He stopped near a fallen log, breathing hard. He set the mother down gently. She was sweating. Violet blood slowly soaked through the bandages. The cub jumped down and crawled to her side, nuzzling her cheek. Darren crouched low and looked to the sky. Lightning flashed, and in that light, he saw them, not just drones. Ships, sleek, black, hovering above the storm clouds like vultures circling a battlefield. They were scanning everything, tree by tree, heat signatures, movement, heartbeats. They weren't searching randomly. They knew what they were looking for, and they were getting closer. He needed to act fast. Darren checked the old path on his wrist screen. There was a narrow cave 2 hills away. No signals could pass through its thick rock walls. If they made it there, maybe the ships would lose track. "Come on," he whispered. But just as he stood to lift the mother again, she stopped him. Her paw rested on his hand. Her eyes were open, glowing now, dim but alive. Darren leaned closer. She opened her mouth and spoke, not with her voice, but inside his mind. "They took everything. My mate, my kind, my world. The child must live." Darren froze. This wasn't just a mother protecting her cub. This was the last of her species, and that cub, more than just a baby, maybe a future, maybe a weapon, maybe hope. He swallowed and nodded. "Then we run, together." He lifted her again. The cub jumped into the bag on his chest. Rain beat against his back. The wind howled louder. But Darren didn't stop. Behind them, the hum of the ships grew stronger. Suddenly, a blinding beam of light shot through the trees. It lit the ground, around them, shaking the forest. A voice echoed down from the sky, robotic and cold. "Return the genetic cargo, or be terminated." Darren turned. 3 figures dropped from the ship, tall, armored, fast. They weren't soldiers. They were hunters, and they were not human. One of them scanned Darren. Human identified, primitive, not authorized for Class 6. Biocontact. The second one raised a weapon. Darren didn't think. He fired first. His shot missed, but the blast echoed loud through the trees. He ducked behind a rock, pulling the mother and cub with him. The hunters fired back, bright burning bolts tearing through trees and dirt. The cub squealed in fear. Darren looked at the mother. She was slipping away again, barely conscious. They wouldn't survive a fight. But maybe a distraction. He grabbed a flare from his belt, pulled the pin. He threw it far into the woods. The light shot up, exploding in red flames. The hunters turned for just a second. That's all he needed. He ran, fast, heart pounding. Branches cut his face. Mud soaked his legs, but he didn't stop. He found the cave just ahead, hidden under thick roots. He slid down the rocks, pulled the mother in after him. The cub jumped from the bag and helped pull the blanket over her. They were inside. Dark. Silent. Safe for now. Outside, the ship searched. The hunters scanned. But they couldn't see them anymore. Darren sat back against the cave wall, chest heaving. His hands shook. He looked at the cub, who stared back with glowing eyes. Then, inside his mind, he heard, "You are now part of our story." The translator. Chip, the cave was cold, but silence felt like safety. Darren sat in the shadows, his back against the rock wall. The fire he had made was small and smokeless, just enough to warm the mother's side. Her breathing was shallow, slow but steady. The cub lay curled in Darren's lap. Its eyes were open, but it didn't blink. It just stared up at him, as if studying his soul. He wasn't sure when it happened, but he didn't feel like just a man anymore. He felt like a guardian, a protector, someone chosen. Hours passed. The storm outside faded, but the danger hadn't. Every so often Darren heard the low hum of distant engines in the sky. The hunters were still out there, waiting, searching. Suddenly the cub moved. It stepped away from the fire, reached into the mother's thick chest fur, and pulled something out. A small silver object. Smooth. Shaped like a tiny coin. It blinked, with a faint blue light. The cub walked over to Darren and pressed the coin to his neck. Before he could react, it stuck to his skin, and the world changed. His mind opened. He gasped and grabbed his head. Voices, images, memories that weren't his. He saw planets in flames, creatures in cages, scientists in dark suits. He saw the mother screaming. He saw the cub being taken, then stolen back, then hidden. He saw a word repeated again and again. Key. The cub wasn't just a survivor, it was the key. Darren fell, back shaking. The mother lifted her head slowly, her golden eyes locked onto his. This time she spoke clearly, not with her mouth but directly into his thoughts. Now you understand. Darren sat upright, his voice low. Understand what? The mother's voice was weak but clear inside his mind. They want the child. Not to protect, to use. Darren blinked. Use how? She didn't answer in words. Instead, the chip sent one more vision, the cub locked in a glowing chamber and screaming as its body changed. Its DNA pulled apart, copied, turned into a weapon. Darren covered his mouth, horrified. They were going to clone him? Turn him into something else? A weapon of control, the mother replied. Built from purity, from peace. Twisted by greed. Darren looked at the cub. But he's just a child. That is why he must live. The mother tried to rise but groaned in pain. Darren helped her lie back down. His hands were shaking. His heart beat like thunder. What do I do? He whispered. The mother closed her eyes. Take him beyond the dark range. Past the blue ridge. There, he will be safe and free. Darren looked down at the cub. It stared up at him with bright, trusting eyes. No fear, only hope. Just then, a small red light blinked from the corner of the cave. Darren froze. A tracking device. Buried deep inside the mother's fur. She looked at him with sadness. They marked me. They will find us again. Darren's throat tightened. He knew what she meant. She wouldn't survive the next run. But the cub could, if Darren carried him. If Darren ran alone. The mother reached out her paw and placed it on the cub's chest. Then, her voice filled his mind one last time. You are no longer just a human, you are now his bond, his guardian, his shield. Darren stared at her, then slowly nodded. Tears filled his eyes, though he didn't fully understand why. He didn't know the cub's name. He didn't know the mother's world. But he knew this. He would not let the last hope of a dying species fall into enemy hands. The mother smiled softly. Then her glow faded, and the cave was quiet again, except for the sound of a tiny cub's heartbeat, and the fire burning low. Stand or run, a sound came from the cub. Not a cry, not a chirp, but something, like a whisper carried on wind that wasn't there. Darren opened his eyes. The cave was still dark. The fire had burned low, but something had changed. The cub stood at the mouth of the cave, looking out into the night. Its fur had turned dark like stone. Its tail curled slowly, alert. Darren sat up. The silence outside felt wrong. Not peaceful. Empty. As if the forest had been erased. Then he heard it. A faint humming sound. Deep and sharp, like a blade dragging across the sky. They had found them again. Darren grabbed his pack. The mother's body lay still, wrapped in his old blanket. He couldn't take her with him, not anymore. But he placed one hand on her side, gently. You saved him. I swear. Now I will too. The cub nuzzled her once. Then it turned to Darren and jumped into his arms. Outside, the trees were glowing faint blue. It wasn't sunlight. It was scanners. He could see the outlines of 4 hunter units moving through the forest. Smooth. Fast. No footsteps, no voices, machines, not men, and they were spreading out, closing in. Darren had 2 choices: run deeper into the caves and hope they didn't follow, or lure them away, give the cub a real chance. He looked down at the small creature in his arms. "You're not just some experiment," he whispered. "You're someone. You matter." The cub tilted its head. Then slowly, it stretched its paw toward Darren's chest and touched his heart. In that moment, Darren felt something burn under his skin. A connection. Strange light glowed faintly from his veins, just for a second. Then it was gone. The cub backed away, stepping into the shadows. Darren blinked. "What did you do?" The answer came not in words, but in instinct. The cub had marked him, linked to him. If they were scanned now, the hunters would see the cub's energy signature inside Darren. They'd chase him, not the cub. Darren didn't. "Wait." He pulled out a flare, lit it, and threw it into the open. Red light exploded across the forest floor. The hunters turned. Their scanners blinked red. Target found. Darren ran. He ran fast, crashing through branches, sliding down rocks, kicking, through mud. His chest burned, his breath was loud, but he didn't stop. Behind him, the hunters followed. Fast. Unstoppable. He ducked, weaved, jumped. Fire from their rifles tore through trees around him. He reached the cliff's edge. The river below roared. No time to think. He jumped. Water swallowed him whole. The current pulled him under. He kicked hard, breaking through to the surface. Gasping, shaking, he let the river carry him. Behind him, the hunters paused at the cliff. They scanned, waited, but they didn't jump. Miles away, back in the cave, the cub waited, alone, but not afraid. The connection was still alive, and it knew. The human had chosen to stand. What he was protecting. The river spit him out like a broken branch. Darren rolled onto the wet shore, coughing, bleeding, cold, but alive. His ribs ached. His clothes were torn. His rifle was gone. But the glow on his chest, where the cub had touched him, still pulsed faintly beneath the skin. He was still linked, and the cub was still waiting. The forest beyond the river was quiet. Too quiet. He knew what it meant. The hunters had given up the chase. They thought he was dead. They'd return to the cave now, to finish what they started. Darren's eyes burned with rain and rage. He stood. He wouldn't let the cub face them alone, not after everything, not after the mother's last breath. Back in the cave, the cub sat silently beside the fire. It didn't cry. It didn't run. It waited, because somehow it believed he would come back. Hours later, a shadow appeared at the cave mouth. The cub looked up sharply, ears high, fur glowing silver blue. Then, the shadow stepped in, wet, muddy, bruised, but breathing. The human had returned. Darren dropped to his knees. "You stayed?" he whispered. The cub crawled into his lap, placing a paw on his chest. Their bond pulsed again, stronger this time, brighter. Suddenly, the translator chip blinked. A new message lit up in Darren's mind. Not from the cub, but from the mother. One final memory. Her voice echoed gently. "The child is not just a survivor. He carries all of us, our voices, our code, our history." Images poured into Darren's head. Planets, songs, ancient knowledge written in light. The cub wasn't just a living being. He was a living archive, a biological vault, a seed for a species that was now gone. That's why the hunters wanted him. Not to kill, to control, to take the future and lock it in chains. But Darren had protected it. Not for reward, not for power, but because it was the right thing to do. Days passed. The hunters stopped searching. No signal, no trace. Darren buried the mother deep beneath a stone tree and marked her grave. The cub pressed its head against the stone, humming softly. A goodbye. Then the two of them turned toward the mountains. Together. Years later, people in nearby colonies whispered stories of a wild man who lived beyond the Blue Ridge, of a glowing leopard child seen by moonlight, of a human who turned pale the day he realized what he protected wasn't a creature, it was a legacy.